So I've got Dane Baptiste. This is a British stand-up comedian, writer, and presenter. He's the first Black British act to be nominated for the Best Newcomer Award at 2014's Edinburgh Comedy Awards. Hi guys, this is Prophets of Rock TV, Erica James Show podcast, episode 5. And with me today, I just have one of the most amazing authors that I've ever met, the Stefanie Sword-Williams. Hi,
Hi.
I start this off with every show, just a quick introduction. I'll let you know this lady's stats. Stephanie is the founder of the platform and event series called F Being Humble. She also has a fantastic new book, guys. It's out on all book retailers. It's amazing. It's called F Being Humble, Why Self Promotion Isn't a Bad Word. And it's a book that instills a lot of confidence and self worth, which we'll get into. Stephanie is also has a real gift I've found in identifying the strengths within herself as well as pulling it out of others. She's been commissioned by international companies from Google, Warner Music, Bumble. Just this week, in time for a couple of conferences that I've had, I've been watching her TED Talk, which has given me a lot of confidence this week and strength. And she's also been named one of Forbes 30 under 30, which we'll get into as well. And the Dots have also called her the creative, identified her as one of 100 of the trailblazers and creatives for millennials. So she's just an incredible human, and we've got her on the show today, which we're so lucky to have. Hey, Stephanie, how you doing today?
I'm good, thank you. Thank you so much for such a lovely introduction.
Oh, you're very welcome. It's very deserved. And I guess we'll go straight into the book. It's just a phenomenal read. I've had a breeze through it and it's just so incredible. And I guess what inspired you to write the book? We'll start there.
I was very fortunate that when I started running my events in London for being humble and essentially just hosting these really interactive workshops and talks, the response that I got very early on was really positive. And so when I was very early on in the stages of growing the business, I was approached by quite a few different publishers and sort of agents who were like, you should write a book. And I just, I'd never been celebrated for my writing. I never thought that was in my trajectory. So I was pretty hesitant and I actually said no at first. But it was after I saw the growth of being humble and how speedy it was growing and how many people were being affected positively in a really good way that I realized that at that time, and even still now, to be honest, I'm just one woman running a business and I could only really be, in X amount of cities, or at that time I was only really in London hosting events. So I just thought it'd be an amazing opportunity for me to have a legacy of the content and the movement that I'm trying to create. And so that even if you never get to meet me, you get to benefit from the content that I'm sharing. And I think it's gone on to do exactly that.
It has, I mean, it's just, it's like a millennial woman or person's Bible. It really is. It's one of those books that you just have to have on your side when you're really, in the workplace or just dealing with all sorts of issues and highs and lows. It's really a go to for me. And I guess, I love the name FB and Humble. So how did you come up with that title, and was it a particular moment when you were just like, you know what, I'm gonna stand in my power right now? Was there an instant that made you just realize that, you know what, I'm tired of this. I want to drop this guard and be me. What was that moment?
Yeah, I think, do you know what? I worked in multiple different businesses when I was working full time. And I really felt like in almost every job, I didn't even feel, I know the situation was lots of empty promises, told I was going to get a promotion, told I was going to get a pay rise, all of these things. Then it comes down to it. And for whatever reason, it didn't happen. And rather than being honest about the reasons it didn't happen, it was sort of like, almost gaslighting of being told like, oh no, you just need to do this, or oh no, it will happen, but just not yet. And it was just so infuriating. And it was actually a lot of the reasons that I left the companies that I worked for, because I was like, no, you said this was going to happen. You've like sold me a false promise here. And actually, I just didn't ever want to settle for anything less than I knew I deserved. Obviously, that came with confidence of like getting better at my job and knowing the impact that I was having. But I just felt like I needed to make a statement on behalf of the entire world and anybody that has ever been felt like their demands haven't been met and they haven't been rewarded as they were promised or accordingly based on their work. And I've really spent a lot of time. I spent a lot of time working in advertising, obviously for 7 years before growing humble, but I've always really been passionate about purpose-led communications, about looking at how wording could sort of really influence the way people act and behave. And I know that when I really had, like, look back and look at the advertising I admired when I was going through the industry, it was always those things that made people take action. And that for me had to be integral in whatever I created. I always make the joke that if I'd have created a business like Shoot for the Stars, it would, gone nowhere. Nobody would have been bothered about that. So I knew I wanted to be provocative. I think if anybody knows me, they know that I'm I don't want to say outspoken, but I'm definitely confident in airing my opinions and also just empowering. Like for me, it's not about standing on a chair with a megaphone telling everyone I'm better than you are. It's about going, being humble, I deserve this, and actually I am worthy of whatever it is I'm about to ask for. So I think that's a big aspect of it. And I just wanted to come up with a name where people would say it on behalf of me and it would need no explanation. And I think, again, that is exactly what happens when I walk into a room and when other people advocate for me when I'm not there.
Of course. I mean, just thank you for even sharing that, because it is one of those, it captured social media. If you go on LinkedIn, if you go on Instagram, if you go on Twitter, you could just see that and feel that, that phrase, essentially what's turned into a movement, is traveling, and people are feeling empowered, and knowing the genesis of it even more now is incredible to hear. You did touch up on those years in advertising. I guess what helped you make that big leap away from that to this space, to an even more entrepreneurial space? What made you know that you can branch out on yourself, and that did you know it would be successful at the time of making that jump? Did you know you would have an inkling that you would be here essentially?
It's such a good question. I actually gave a talk recently about emotional intelligence in the workplace and why it's important not to stay in toxic environments. And one of the things that I said in the final job that I worked in advertising, I was like, this is my last go at making it work in advertising, because I've moved companies multiple times. I've always wanted to work on purposeful work. And for whatever reason, due to budgets, due to clients, due to the company structure, due to capacity, I never seemed to find the work I was really proud to do, the sort of environments where I was encouraged to flourish. And I always longed for and wanted more autonomy. I wanted more creative input. I wanted to be involved in more important things. And I kind of just got to the point where I was like, I just don't think advertising and working within an agency is going to be the thing for me anymore. Simultaneously, my book was coming out and I was having requests to speak in Copenhagen and Australia and Amsterdam and all these great things. So I decided to quit my job, and that was 2 weeks before the pandemic. And then the pandemic hit, and then I lost like the first 6 months worth of business. Everything went online. There were no events to speak at. So it was a definite shock to the system. But I always say, and I've said this a few times before actually, is that like, I knew when it was the right time to go for me. So I remember the growth of Humble happening so quickly. Everybody was like, oh my God, are you just going to quit your job then? And I was like, no, because at the time I loved it. At the time I enjoyed it. So I wasn't in a rush to leave. And I actually think, maybe had the book not come along, I probably would have maintained both roles, but actually it got to the point where I was like, my company will not let me take 3 weeks or 4 weeks off work just to go travel and do a book tour. So it was also before all the remote working and the flexibility. So maybe things would be different now, but it was the right time for me. And I think that's so important for anyone listening, is that like, people are always going to tell you when you should and shouldn't do things, but you're going to know in your gut. It might be timing, it may be opportunity, it might be a new connection, it may be that you've launched a product that if you don't do it right now, it's never going to work again, sort of thing. So just listen to what it is that you feel right about doing. Don't just let other people tell you how to do it, because I think that's where we end up in situations where either companies don't make it, they start up and fail really quickly, or actually founders just aren't confident enough to channel their business and go promote themselves. So I definitely think do it on your own terms. And I can guarantee there'll be some sort of sign that directs you to go, this is the time to go.
I mean, are you guys listening to the jewels right now? Like, that's incredible. That's incredible advice, because there's so many people that are listening, especially young women and just young people in general, who don't know whether they should leave their job or they should start now while they're in their job to scale back a bit and develop their business. So just knowing that you're still an entrepreneur, even if you're working full time, you could still find a way, I guess, of doing of setting up your business on the side. And I guess, what advice, I guess, would you give to them? Because sometimes, one might feel a little bit of, am I really dedicating as much time to this as I should be? But I got to pay my rent. I've got, to get by. So what advice, I guess, one or two things would you say to them to just keep going and keep encouraged, even though they can't do what they want full time?
Yeah, I think always find a way to keep chipping away at whatever it is you want to do. I think we get really stuck in situations, and for whatever reason, financials, accessibility, access to meeting people, there's loads of reasons why. But I sort of think the worst thing I see people do is just give up altogether. And actually, if you chip away 10 minutes a day, 20 minutes, 30 minutes, as whatever time you can give towards that thing, at least you'll feel like you're getting closer towards it, as opposed to just this gap widening and widening and you being further away from whatever it is you want to do or achieve. And that's the same as if you're in it. Like, I speak to a lot of people who, like, they're running a podcast, but it's going really slowly, and it's another job on top of another job, and they're like, we just don't know how to keep momentum. And I know when I was working full time whilst growing Being Humble, I just used to say to myself, right, Monday to Friday, I'm not going to be able to do big tasks, but what can I do after work for half an hour or an hour whilst I'm watching Love Island, or 2 hours whilst I'm on the train commute to go see my family, or when can you use that time that is absolutely there once you put down your phone and stop scrolling as much, and all of those things that we become accustomed to making habits around. It is actually a lot easier to find more time in your day than you think. I know, like, when I was working full time, I used to be like, right, I've got an hour at lunch. How many emails can I send at lunch? I've got 30 minutes on the train in the morning. I'm on the way to the gym, 10 minutes on the bus. What can I do? I mean, I didn't go to the gym that much, but you get the gist of it, is that, like, try and do something to work towards it. And also just be kind to yourself, that actually you've got your entire life, working career, to do whatever it is you want to do. There is such an economy or a pace at the moment where we just must complete everything instantaneously. And I am absolutely a victim of that. I recently launched a second business, and it hasn't been like an overnight success, even though there's some great things happening. But because Humble grew at such speed,
Yeah.
I'm disappointed that this one isn't. And actually, I'm like, what am I talking about? Like, I'm going to be working on this for at least the next 10 to 20 years. So why am I in this rush to do it? So I think chip away at whatever it is you want to do, but also be patient and be kind to yourself, because this timeline, we have a lot of time to complete these goals, and not everything is and will be instant returns.
No, absolutely. I mean, thank you for sharing that because it's absolutely true. I don't know where we are on this timeline of, everyone has a different pace and journey. And I think it's not just even about the success or financial success, it's your personal success. It's taking care of yourself through that journey. That's also a really important thing. And that brings me back to the whole point of how I got to know you and know of your story and your amazing work through the lovely Dior. For everyone watching, there was an amazing talk that happened earlier this year. I follow Dior, I follow everything, most of the things that she does. I've been to her talks, and the lovely Stefanie was a part of the talk as well. And it was talking about confidence. Now, they weren't talking about confidence in a little bit. They were going in. They were going in on all tips and tricks of how to gain and instill confidence. They spoke of imposter syndrome. And I know you mentioned something that was just amazing. I think it was FOSS. I love that. Could you tell us a little bit about that and how you came to develop like this mantra of thinking?
So FOSS, the fear of sounding stupid, is a sort of is inspired obviously by imposter syndrome. And I think it's sort of the physical aspect of imposter syndrome, of like that feeling of like, oh, I am really worried that I'm going to sound stupid if I say this thing, if I advocate for myself, if I celebrate myself. Like, it's such a common sort of experience that so many of us feel. I host many workshops for corporate businesses, like weekly. I'm a motivational speaker. I give keynote talks. And every time I mention FOSS, I like say to everyone, give me a show of hands who experience this. And everybody says yes, or everybody has at some point in their career. So I think ultimately it's a really good phrase to be aware of, that actually the fear of sounding stupid is something that holds a lot of people back. The problem with FOSS is that we are focusing too much on what other people think of us as opposed to doing what we want. So when we are so sort of driven by other people's perception of us, we actually minimize ourselves, we undersell ourselves, we're critical, we're self-deprecating, because we are trying to fit in, particularly in the UK, with a society that thinks it's cooler to talk down about themselves than they do advocate for themselves, which to me is just mind-blowing, because I just cannot get my
I don't
my
understand.
mind around that. And it's something that I really, really try to advocate for. Another sort of phrase that I think holds a lot of people back with confidence is that I've originated through my workshops is PLF, which is pre-launch fear.
Oh yeah, I had
This,
that with launching this.
yeah, podcasters particularly, right? Because you do all the hard work, you do all the interviews, and then it's when you listen back and you're like, oh, cringe, hate my voice,
Edit
hate
it,
this.
you're like, but it gets
Yeah.
better.
Oh.
It does.
And pre-launch fear isn't just, okay, I'm nervous about doing this thing, I'm scared. What I've identified and what I've observed amongst people is that when it comes to pre-launch fear, you don't just say, oh, my voice sounds weird on the podcast. You actually start to pick apart everything in your life that
Yeah,
is not up to scratch. I'm single, I'm not a homeowner, I'm nowhere near having kids, I like live at home with my parents, I, all of those things. Have got any savings behind me? I got drunk last week and I'm so embarrassed, and I like, why can't I go out and not make a fool of myself? You'll basically just surface all of these
all the bad.
sort of insecurities, all of these things that you obviously feel some sort of emotions towards, and you'll use that as a reason to not launch your podcast. Like, and I've seen it happen so many times. And it's not just with podcasting, it's launching events, products, businesses, side hustles, speaking, promoting. So I also just wanted to flag for those people listening, 24 hours before you're about to announce something to the world, whatever it may be, you will get PLF and you will panic. But just know that I've told you this is coming. And what you need to do is have a list of all the amazing things you have done that either counteracts that or actually just proves. You don't need to counteract why you've not bought a house yet. You need to remind yourself of all the amazing people you've spoken to on your podcast and all the great things you've done. So I think actually what's important is remembering all the good stuff and having that to hand so that you can cancel out that sort of pre-launch fear when it happens, because I'm sorry to say it, but it will most likely happen. So it's a combination of FOSS and the PLF that I want you to be mindful of with anything when it comes to self-promoting and putting yourself out there.
Yes, yes, yes to all of that. I'm telling you, I've done it since the talk, since hearing you say that, and it works. It works. You know, it helps you go through the actual process. I've got my journal here, and I'm always writing down, oh gosh, what am I going to be worried about? What's bringing up a worry? Just write it out and go through it. That's how you kind of decimate everything. And yeah, you've spoken about imposter syndrome. I mean, in your life and your journey so far, you've done so many amazing things. What would you say had been your biggest challenge or something that you've really felt like you had to overcome in order to stand in that successful, confident place?
I think just the very nature of launching a business called being humble was tough, right? And I've been talking about this recently, that I remember the first year of, particularly as when it's a side hustle, because when something's a side hustle, sometimes people don't take that as seriously. And I just felt like every room that I went to was either full of like men in suits or older people. And the minute I said the name of my brand, I was just disregarded. Like people were like, oh, she's tacky, she's millennial. Oh, but I believe in being humble. And oh, I think humility is the key to success and all of these things. And I was very often written off before I'd even had the chance to communicate what it was that I did. So much so that somebody in the Financial Times actually wrote an article, why shameless self-promoters aren't welcome in my inbox. And she
Wow.
then proceeded to rip me to shreds without interviewing me, without speaking to my customers, without speaking to my clients, any of that. She just
Very
wanted to use me as a target and went in. And I definitely don't think I would have been targeted if my business wasn't called that, right? So there were a lot of things. I had a lot of people troll me on LinkedIn, of all places. It's where I get the most trolling of comments. You know, I feel like it was this constant uphill struggle. And then the pandemic hits, and job security is out the window. Everybody's side hustling, everyone's starting their own business, everybody's trying to find ways to feel more secure. And all of a sudden everyone's like, tell me how to self-promote. The growth of being humble during lockdown was just unbelievable, because it was like, I need someone to advise me real quick, and I need to hear something different that's not like every other LinkedIn tutorial or how to update your CV. There were so many of those seminars and sessions. And actually, I think that was when actually everything that I'd been worried about and scared of and was paranoid about, the name itself was the thing that was the advertising and the marketing and what attracted people. And now, I'm aware that a lot of it will be brand awareness. And, I've had a lot of successful moments that have qualified why I'm here and what I'm saying. But now I finally feel like I walk into rooms and I don't have to justify myself. And people are saying, oh, I can't tell you how grateful I am of your Instagram account or reading your book, or my friend went to one of your talks, or a company hosted one of your workshops and it was like game changing for me. And it's just such a nice relief to have, steady opportunities coming through, not constantly feeling like I'm convincing people of what I'm saying is valid and that it's going to help. Because I've always known self-promotion is a really successful thing. And I've known I can be the best person to help with that. But I've had a lot of struggle convincing other people. So it's really nice to be on this side, and having conversations where people are actually just really grateful that I did take that leap, and I made the effort to make this my full-time role, essentially.
Well, I'm very glad you did. You're very brave. And the fact that you're in a room and people think that that's the one business that's not going to really work is the reason why people are so attracted to it. Because, even in the job I do researching for TV, I produce items here and there, and have this platform. That will make me pick this aside from other things because it's just to the point, it's bite sized, and it's really a mantra that's just very quick and digestible. So it's just really shows that you need to just, everyone listening, stay confident in what you come up with and really believe in it before anyone else. Because if you don't have haters, you're not doing it right. It really shows that you've got something to say, and that's really important. And lastly, we're rounding up. Thank you so much. You've been such an amazing guest. I know you have a really busy day. I guess what would be the two or three? Actually, I want to talk about self promotion because before I started this one, you approach people when you do podcasts, etc. And I had someone actually criticize me for having um a brand or starting a brand rather, because they knew I was doing researching and working in TV, and I just thought, would I have been criticized in this way if I was not like a woman? If I was like a man, would it look like I was greedy or just looking for, And I think it's important for women in particular to understand it's not arrogant to talk about what you do, especially when you work hard at it and you graft and there's late hours to this. Take pride in the fact that you are your brand and you're creating something. So I guess, advice, tips for all people of maintaining their enthusiasm for what they do, in terms of self-worth and self-promotion.
It's a really great question. I think with everything you do, you've ultimately got to ask yourself what you're working towards, and that needs to be essentially what drives you. Like I can't say to you, if you self-promote, you'll definitely get a pay rise, because it doesn't necessarily, that's not always what people are working towards. Like they're not the only reason. So you need to understand what reasons you're self-promoting for. So to sort of give a personal experience, I've always wanted to be a TED speaker, like always loved TED Talks, always thought, wow, that would be an amazing thing. And it got to the point in my career where I looked at my situation, working in advertising, I was working in new business, I was account director, as business director. But I knew that unless I was a founder of a company or unless I was the MD, I was never going to get to publicly speak for the business. I was never going to get invited to these things. I was a young woman from the North, and I knew there were a lot of things that I wanted to say and share. So that was a big personal driver for me to sort of create Being Humble in my own community and share my knowledge and share my things, because helping people find their worth is something I am really passionate about. I do really care about. And having that dream in the very far distance, very far away, has been something that has constantly kept me on that track to keep going, to show up, to do these events, to network, to do all those things. So it's not been about, oh, I want to charge 20 grand for a talk. That's not been the motivator for me. The TED Talk has always been the thing that has been like, I'm working to that, and that's what I'm going to keep doing to get to. So I think my big advice would be like, figure out what dream you're working towards and ask yourself, what are you actually doing to get there? Because if you're not doing anything, it's going to be a really slow journey to that dream. And you need to think about, like, what are those, as I said, the small steps that you can take. The other thing is just really asking yourself, how can you make it a habit? So how can you make it repetitive? Like, I've helped so many friends with self-promotion. They get into it. They do about, 2 weeks of posts, and then they drop off and they're like, oh, can't be bothered. Oh, it's not that important. Oh, I'm not getting anything anyway. It's like going to the gym. You never see the results after the first 4 weeks. Like, it could be even longer, right? So I do just think like it's maintaining it. So I use like later.com, which is like £6 or £7 a month to schedule my content across LinkedIn, Pinterest, Instagram. And that just means that everything is just ticking over nicely. So if you think, and this also is really important with pre-launch fear, because when you are low confidence, when you're struggling with imposter syndrome, you will find everything you can, like find every reason not to post that thing, not to share that thing. Whereas if you pre-schedule everything, if that's already out there and it's sorted out for you, then the reliance on you there's no opportunity for you to back out, basically. And I think that's a really important thing. And then just to sort of elaborate on that point, put yourself out there before you're ready. So I'm very prone to launch a course, start selling tickets, and I've not even made the course. I know what I want it to be about. I know what I want to help people with. I start selling the tickets, and as soon as those tickets sell, I'm like, okay, can't back out now. So again, if you know you're someone that is likely to talk yourself out of a situation,
Right.
tell yourself procrastinating perfectionist. I wrote about in my book.
Yeah.
You know, if you are likely to be that person, find ways for you to sign up to things, to put yourself out of that comfort zone, to make that step, and make sure that you can't back out, because then that makes it a lot more real and you start to do the things that you actually want to do.
Yeah.
These, like, it's almost giving yourself fake deadlines and timelines, because when you've got this never ending one, there's no demand to do it, and when you're motivating yourself, boy, is that hard. So try and find ways to commit to doing something, even if it's just a small step,
Yeah.
so that you actually get that ball rolling.
Oh, amazing, Stephanie. Amazing. And you know what? You are an example of everything you're saying. No, it's very true. I think that procrastination is one of the, it could be used as a tool. Give yourself a deadline. We know how to do deadlines when it comes to our jobs and having employers, but give yourself that deadline, and you'll make it. Oh, that's amazing. Thank you so much, Stephanie, for your time. It's been an amazing chat. Guys, stream this, listen to it, soak it in. You could do anything, just set your mind to it and just take those steps and you can get there. Once again, Stephanie's amazing new book is out, F Being Humble, Why Self Promotion Isn't a Bad Word. Guys, go and get it. If you haven't already, get it. It's out on all book retailers, online as well, and in stores. It's phenomenal. It really is. Thank you, Stephanie.
Thank you so much. So nice to chat with you.
Pleasure. Oh,